Could it be finally some good news in the Twin Cities real estate market? That's right. My name's Joe Carmack. This is your monthly market update for December 2023. We're going to talk about interest rates. We're going to talk about home prices. We're talking about for a buyer's market, seller's market, and how that's changing. And then I'm going to hit you with seasonality. So if you're thinking about buying or selling in the spring, we'll go over exactly what you need to know with the current and upcoming market. But first, why don't we give you some good news? And that's, of course, going to be with interest rates, which you've probably seen all over the news. Now, let's recap. 2 months ago when I did my market update for you, we were just under 8%, which was just crazy high. As you can see, we had really been going up hard and fast for the last few months. Fortunately, there is some good news, and we're now down to 7.1% as our rate for today. Unfortunately, I don't know why they switched this to dark mode. I apologize. But if you look in there, you can see we obviously peaked right around my last market update, fortunately, and we've been coming down ever since. Now, this isn't really a huge surprise. If you've been following me for a while, I do these usually monthly, and we've been seeing that number go up and expecting it to start coming down. That's for a number of different reasons, inflation being the main one. We're seeing those things start to soften with the economy. And so as those things soften, the Federal Reserve will stop raising rates because the point of raising them is to slow the rest of things down. So we are seeing that number coming down, which is really, really encouraging. But I actually don't think a lot of people understand what that truly means for your payments. So I put together a little scenario for you. And let's say you're buying a home at $400,000. I'll use kind of some generic terms, maybe an average scenario for what a normal buyer would be doing. And then October, if we were at that 7.9%, you can see we were at about $3,400 for a $400,000 home. If we look at that same exact scenario, but we just dropped that interest rate from 7.9 to 7.1, you're actually saving more than $200 a month on the exact same house. So it really is a huge savings that we're down 0.8% right now, and it's been going down. We're also expecting the number to keep going in the right direction. So I do love buying in the winter just because prices are down and competition is lower, but the fact that we're seeing interest rates come down has just been really encouraging. Speaking of home prices, why don't we take a look at what our median sale price is doing around the Twin Cities. This is your rolling 12-month average. This is the one that you're going to look at if you're looking at a bigger macro lens view, if you want to understand how your home's appreciating over time, what prices are doing in the big picture. You can see we're up about $2,000 since the beginning of the year, which is not nearly as much as we had been going up in years previous. So if you're hearing of talk of home prices plummeting, they're not. As you can see, we're up $2,000 around the Twin Cities, but they are definitely going up slower, which is a really good thing. Interest rates going up is what's mainly stomped on that a little bit so that our graph slows down. I'll show you how we're doing year to date, but if you are hearing of pricing coming down, it's most likely this graph that people are actually talking about. And this is not the rolling average. This is the literal month-to-month changes from 1 month to the next. So here you can see, if we just start over right here, you can see November, we did come down, but it actually wasn't as much as I expected. I would have expected this to have gone down a little bit more. We'll discuss seasonality in depth in a minute when we talk about predictions for next year. But you just got to understand that with Minnesota's market like it is, our winters being a little chilly, people slow down in the winter months. They spring back up. So as soon as January hits, prices do this, and then they come down. What you're looking at now is these green dots are showing each of the Novembers. And then you can see as we go back, these I'm referencing the Januaries. The reason I did that is just so you can see the green dots is essentially where we're at our current place in the year. And then that's what we're trying to predict. What is the next few months going to look like? So prices are certainly going to be going down. You can see every single year they do. We typically bottom out in January. Almost every single year, January is the lowest purchase price month. So right here from November, I do expect that this will keep going down. How much is really kind of anybody's guess. I would say about 1% over the next couple of months would be a pretty good number. So $3,000 to $5,000 or so is how much will come down. But we're keeping an eye on that one very closely because that's going to tell us how we're going to wrap up the whole year. And we may actually be into negative numbers for the first time in a really long time. And home prices may actually come down on that previous chart, which I showed you, which has the rolling 12-month average. A couple more things before we get into my seasonality predictions. This is how we are shaping up so far for the year. Now, this is all very related, as you can see. So with 2021, on that last graph I showed you how we bounce up, we're talking from the bottom of the valley to the top of the peak. So in 2021, you can see we went up 16.3%, and then we came down 5.6. Last year, up 14, down 8. And then this year, so far, you can see we went up 8.9%, and then we've come down 5.6 so far. So for the year, we're currently about 3.3 on the month-to-month chart there. And like I had said, I anticipate for the next maybe 2 months worth of numbers, we'll see that come down around 1% each month. That would be pretty normal. I think that would be a good sort of healthy rhythm to the market. The fact that we didn't actually go down as much this past month is a little bit curious. It certainly seems like things are slowing down from all the clients that I'm working with. We're getting offers accepted a lot more easily. We're negotiating better terms. Maybe we can get some, closing costs paid by the sellers to help the buyers out, that kind of thing. So I was surprised by that. However, the weather really does affect things in Minnesota. And we've also had an unseasonably warm winter so far. It's like 40 degrees outside, bright and sunny, and there's no snow on the ground. And so because of that, I think that's kept people into the market a little bit longer, pushing in towards Christmas and the first of the year. So because we saw less happen the last month or two, we may see a little bit more than 1%. But overall, you can see we're still in positive digits so far. So let's look at the month supply of inventory. Now, for those that are new, the lower we are on this chart, the more of a seller's market we're in, the higher, the more of a buyer's market we're in. So very interesting. This did trend up basically like it has. But if we're looking at the last 2 months, we basically didn't see a lot of change. October, we did see us come up 0.1, and then we stayed at the 1.9 for November. Now, to give you some broader perspective, of course, you're going to want to zoom out. This is looking at the longer term view, and you can see where we're at. We're still incredibly low. That red line would be sort of the balanced market target, if you will, of where we would like to be. And we're still not even close. So we will certainly keep this trend going upwards with it becoming more towards a balanced market. However, I don't think that's actually going to happen nearly as much as I would have predicted 6 months ago or so, maybe even a year, for a number of reasons that we're going to talk about. We're going to push pause on that, though, and let's just review days on market, because this is actually probably what I hear the most that people are talking about. They're like, oh, my neighbors put their house on the market. It's been sitting there for a month or 2 months. Things are certainly moving slower. They always do this time of year anyways, and it's hard for the average homeowner to separate what's a month-to-month change and what's the normal thing, and what's the shifting market, and to differentiate those two is pretty hard. So that's why I just stick to the data. We did come up a little bit, so we were at 23 days on market. So that would be the average time a home spends before it goes pending. Okay, that's when the clock stops on the days on market. So we're at 23. Curious though, last year it was actually at 25. So we aren't even as slow of a November as we had last year. I would have expected this number to be higher than last year. So surprising, again, maybe we can attribute it to the warm weather. But in any case, we will expect this to start to keep going up over about the next 2 months or so. I believe we see this number typically peak in February, just the way that the data reports in. December closings will close off in January or February. So we will expect that number to keep going up. You just really got to understand the sky's not falling. Things aren't collapsing. Again, let's look at the bigger picture. If we zoom out, this is the rolling 12-month average over the long haul. Homes are still selling incredibly quickly. So kind of the temperature maybe is what a client asking how quickly homes are selling. They're really, if I make an offer or if I'm going to buy a house, how aggressive is it going to be? That's really what's being asked. And in this case, looking at 19 days on market, things are still selling quickly. I don't think we're going back to this kind of business anytime soon. But hopefully that will continue just to be a little bit more relaxed for clients. All right, now let's get into the good stuff. And that's going to be my predictions for the coming years. Now, you got to understand, I've got no crystal ball, but if we take the emotion out of the home buying and selling process, that's really my job, to interpret the data and just deliver it to you, and you guys make the best decision. Number one, you need to understand, I don't tell people to try to time the market for better or for worse. Okay, just make the best decision you can when your family's ready to move. Don't try and time the market. But let's take a review. You've seen this for a couple of months from me. Now, this is what happens, the relationship between prices and interest rates. So if they're kind of sticking flat for a little bit, then they're going to stay fairly in lockstep. High rates is just going to mean prices don't appreciate as much, which is what you've seen on the previous few slides, okay? But it also does mean that when interest rates start to come down, which if we review, you can see that's already started to happen. It's not a hypothetical. If they do, we've now begun to see rates coming down. Then as you start to see those rates come down, then we're going to see those prices start to jump up. The second thing we have to factor in is seasonality with the market. Again, and we've talked about that one a little bit as well. So as you can see here, this is that relationship of seasonality that's happening. Now, when those prices go up from normal seasonality and when interest rates change, that's what the main thing I'm looking at and not concerned, not worried, but keeping my eye on for next year. So let me give you some beautiful artwork that I put together just for you. This would be our normal market, let's say, is a little flame here. And then if interest rates come down, as you would imagine, that's kind of like putting a little bit of fuel on that fire. All those people that had been payment conscious, couldn't afford or didn't want to pay the price they would have to on their monthly payment to get a home, they've been sitting on the sidelines. Rates coming down will compel them to get into the market, right? They will become more motivated, like that previous blue line that I showed you. So as those folks get into the market, that will cause the market to grow. And what we're looking at with this flame is essentially the prices and how competitive the market is. So the more fuel gets put on the fire, the bigger those prices and competition is going to be. Then we've got to factor in seasonality. That will throw a little more gas on the flame of the market, which will grow even bigger. And then that is likely going to be our spring market. Now, I'm not trying to, be a doomsday, oh no, the sky is falling. And I definitely want to make clear, I don't think we're going back to where we've been the last couple of years, even though there's sort of the right formula for that, the right ingredients to create that really raging hot market with people offering way over, tons of multiple offers, that sort of thing. I actually don't think we're going back to that. That was kind of an anomaly from COVID that was fueled by people stuck in their homes that all of a sudden could go remote work and just a lot of turbulence from those kinds of things. We're not seeing those conditions again. However, doesn't it kind of make sense though that when the barrier of rates is removed and the motivation that's normal market swing of seasonality, all of a sudden we get to January 1st and things could really, really pick up. Now, I do want to be totally fair too. If we see either of these things not happening, that's also going to change things. So let's just say we don't see those interest rates go up, then that might actually hold us off into more of this medium type of market because we'll see the normal seasonality, right? Or let's say the opposite happens, right? Let's say with seasonality not happening. Now, what that would look like is probably if we have a really, really cold, snowy, nasty January or December, then we would not see as much seasonality, or we would just see that pushed off as much. So that instead of a sudden ramp up in activity, we would see just a slow incline. So if we do see that happen, great, then we'll stick to more of this type of a market for our spring market, right? Theoretically, if neither of those things happen, sure, we would be sticking with a market like this, meaning if rates don't come down and if we have a terribly nasty, snowy winter, then potentially we could see a slower spring market, but we're still quite hot. I mean, it's not going to cool down much anymore. And to say we don't see rates continue to go down and we see seasonality completely stop is pretty much not a scenario that's likely whatsoever. So what are you going to do if you want to buy or sell a home in the spring? First of all, if you're selling your home and buying at the same time, it actually doesn't affect you too much. I mean, we'll adapt a little bit, but it's going to help you on the selling side to an equal extent that it's hurting you on the buy side. And so if we just time things correctly and we get things lined up in advance, it won't affect the buyers and sellers too much. Of course, if you're selling, it's only going to help you because we'll have a more competitive market with better sale prices for you. And then if you're only buying, it's actually just going to be to start early. Now, the reason for that is going to be, if you remember back to my rates and prices graph, the earlier we are, the less dramatically things are going to be swinging. And so if a few buyers have gotten into the market because they're a little bit more comfortable with their payment, then there's not going to be as much competition for those people to get in early, versus if you wait until the news and everybody's caught wind and prices are so great and there becomes this kind of frenzy, everyone will get into the market just like you. And if you wait until the end, that's when it's going to be most competitive. Of course, I would love for you to subscribe. You can schedule a buyer's consult with the link in my description down below. You can also download our buyer's guide. My name is Joe Carmack. I appreciate you being here, and I'll see you next month.